This is CNN Student News. I'm Carl Lasest. It is Friday, and that is awesome. Taking you to Capitol Hill today, where things are starting to take shape after the November 8th election. When the 115th Congress convenes early next January, Paul Ryan, a Republican from Wisconsin, will remain Speaker of the House of Representatives. He was re-elected earlier this week to serve a second term in the position. The job of House Minority Leader, though, was less certain. It's currently held by Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California. She's running to keep the job, but Ohio Democrat Tim Ryan announced yesterday he plans to challenge her for it. In the Senate, Republicans re-elected Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell as Majority Leader. Democratic Senator Harry Reid from Nevada is the current Minority Leader, but he's retiring, and Senate Democrats chose Chuck Schumer from New York as the new Senate Minority Leader. There will be a change in the President of the Senate, too. The U.S. Vice President serves in this role, but doesn't get a vote unless senators are evenly divided 50-50. The President of the Senate can then cast the tiebreaker. Right now, the job is held by Vice President Joe Biden. On January 20th, Inauguration Day, it'll shift to Vice President-elect Mike Pence. So the transition is underway, and as part of that, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is scheduled to hold a 2-hour meeting today to discuss his team's progress and potential appointees to his cabinet. He met with several candidates for that yesterday, in addition to former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger and current Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. He traveled to New York yesterday for the get-together. The Japanese leader is the first foreign head of state whom Mr. Trump has met in person since he was elected.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is making every attempt to preserve Japan's relationship with its most important political, diplomatic and trading partner, the United States. Normally, a Japanese leader would wait for the inauguration of a new US president before seeking a meeting. But these are not normal times.
The Japan-US alliance is the axis of Japan's diplomacy and security. The alliance is only alive if there is trust between us.
I will get rid of those tariffs in Japan.
Tokyo has been rocked by Donald Trump's explosive comments on the campaign trail, raising fears that the new administration could turn its back on the alliance. Trump has hinted he could withdraw US troops from Japan unless it paid a bigger share of their upkeep, and suggested that Asian countries could provide their own nuclear defense against North Korea. And then there's Trump's signature opposition to global trade deals, including the President Obama-led Trans-Pacific Partnership, which has had the wholehearted support of Mr. Abe.
I'll take jobs back from Japan and every other country that's killing us. I'll bring the jobs back.
But Abe advisors say Tokyo is looking beyond what they describe as campaign rhetoric.
We're looking at the future, and no matter what any candidate says during the campaign, today is the first day of the rest of his administration.
The first step of that first day for Japan to build a working relationship. Abe has already praised what he described as Trump's, quote, extraordinary talents as a businessman.
Okay, the reason why some international leaders are anxious to see what President-elect Trump will do concerning trade is because on the campaign trail, Mr. Trump spoke out extensively against international trade deals, saying several of them are not good enough for the U.S., its economy, its workers. He said he wants to renegotiate or eliminate deals like NAFTA, the 24-year-old free trade agreement which involves Canada and Mexico. Those are two of America's 3 biggest trading partners. NAFTA's results have been mixed.
You might have heard of NAFTA, also known as the North American Free Trade Agreement. It was the first agreement of its kind and still makes the world's biggest free trade area. So, just what is it? Well, let's begin with the basics. First, it includes Canada, the US, and Mexico. It was proposed in 1992 by these guys, and it was extremely controversial. Critics feared massive job losses, with businesses packing up and moving production to Mexico. Supporters, though, they claimed that it would lead to cheaper goods, and that would lead to economic growth. In fact, it was so controversial that in the 1992 presidential election, a billionaire outsider presidential candidate shot to the top of the polls railing against it. Businessman Ross Perot. Sounds pretty familiar. But NAFTA won out in the end with Congress and then President Clinton ratifying it in 1993.
We are ready to compete and we can win.
NAFTA is a large, incredibly complicated document, but at its core, it's pretty simple. Before NAFTA, when items were imported, they were taxed. After NAFTA, they weren't. This protects goods made domestically at the expense of consumers, since the tax on foreign products is passed down. Higher tariffs, more expensive goods, less trade. Free trade agreements like NAFTA remove those tariffs, incentivizing trade and lowering costs for consumers. Tariffs were greatly reduced at the start of the agreement in 1994 and totally eliminated by 2008. So what did NAFTA accomplish? It's not easy pinpointing the exact effects that NAFTA has had, because there are many factors in how economies function, but since the agreement, U.S. trade amongst Mexico and Canada has tripled. The U.S. trade deficit with Canada and Mexico has increased significantly. But according to this congressional report, NAFTA actually hasn't had that large an effect on the U.S. economy. NAFTA only increased the U.S. GDP by a few hundredths of a percent, because relative to the size of the total economy, trade with Mexico and Canada isn't that big. So the biggest question of all, how has it affected American jobs? Economists agree there's no simple answer. It's impossible to completely separate the effects NAFTA has had on the economy from other external forces like recessions, currency valuations, technological automation, and overall increases in globalization. Many U.S. manufacturing jobs have moved overseas to countries that America doesn't even have free trade agreements with, like China. Overall, domestic manufacturing has taken a spill. Trade has increased, and goods are cheaper.
Yesterday, the clock started ticking on 24 hours of people around the globe trying to set various records. It was Guinness World Records Day, and the publication's come a long way since simply measuring the world's oldest person, tallest building, and fastest runner. It still does that, but it's, well, let's say it's branched out.
It was pretty difficult. I mean, obviously, the team helped by getting me roughly in the right place, but just going down and having to nail that cup of tea was tricky. Absolutely incredible. Just the feeling in my chest and seeing everyone's smiles, it was fantastic.
Congratulations, you are officially amazing.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, good thing it wasn't a slam dunk. He was already at the end of his rope, and success was no guarantee. If he'd bumped that platform, he could have gotten a couple lumps. Thankfully, he won the whole biz kit and caboodle. I'm Carl Lasest, always on the record for CNN Student News.